So it seems to me that almost everything that I do today is somehow grounded and informed by CalArts, by going here. My design sensibility, my circle of friends, the clients I have, the teaching that I do. So CalArts is this major influence, but the one thing that it didn't prepare me for, and it didn't really further me, was with coding and with creating websites. It just couldn't do that. So everything that I know about websites and about coding is almost entirely self-taught, minus my first HTML class in 1999. But I think that is part of my, that is a very important part of my practice. And I often think that I would not have been able to work independently without the ability to code websites by myself. I'm not sure if that's actually true. Maybe I would have figured something else out. Other people are certainly doing that. But for me, it seemed very important to be able to take a web design job and see it through from the beginning to the end, instead of having to hire a programmer. And if I have one advice to designers maybe just starting out in their first or second year, then it would be learn how to code. I think it's a very, very important skill, and it makes you quite powerful, maybe even dangerous. And here's my, this I think leaked on Facebook. This is my very first website that I designed in 1999 after my HTML class at JP College about the artist Edward Munch. That was revamped a year later to look like this, and this site is actually still up on edward-munch.com, and I still get people that write me nice emails and say, thank you so much for putting up all this good work. It was a real inspiration for my 5th grades who's just starting to learn about this artist. And also, I have this print of the Scream. I think it's real. Do you think so? I get those as well. And those, I usually just say, you have to talk to the Munch Museum in Oslo. And probably not. You know, obviously this is, I mean, it's kind of nice to look at this, well, late 90s approach to web design. It's somewhat charming. I'm kind of glad it's still around, and probably will be for as long as I pay for the hosting. I worked on a bunch of websites. So I had the LA Urban Rangers. I'm pretty fond of this website, this kind of ridiculously complex illustration of the LA Urban Rangers universe. And I worked with Ilana Mann again on her, or Ilana Mann, on her personal website. And I worked with Kelly and Eric on their blog redesign, Wood Simple. And I worked with an artist in New York, Quentin Bixbo, in collaboration with Nicole Jaffe, and we created her website for her body of work. And I did a quick website for Wildfiring LA recently. But the one website that I do want to spend the last few minutes of this talk is the Mac Center website, which just relaunched. It had a pretty outdated website for many years. I was brought on, or I actually suggested it. I was kind of squeezing my way in. I said, Kimberly, I really want to redesign your website. Really an awesome project. And she was into it, and eventually she got the funding for it, and we started it. It was a long project. I think we started it in the summer of 2012. So it took a while, and granted, the Everything Lose Will Land catalog kind of got in between there too, where everything stopped on their end and on mine. So I also collaborated on this project with the wonderful Nicole Jaffe, who I've been doing a lot of work together with recently. And we, what I wanted to show in the context of this website, a little bit of my process. And this is somewhat of a quick overview of the UX class that I teach here this semester. So some of it might be familiar. If you want to know more, come by tomorrow, 9 a.m. I'll be saying basically the same thing. If you're in that class, maybe you can tune out for a second. or come later tomorrow. But it's this process of going through different phases in the design project that go from a macro view and go down and down and down and down to a micro view in the end, and that informs the entire process of the final site design. The terminology is inspired or based on a book called The Elements of User Experience, and it's kind of nice that it all starts with S, and it's kind of sexy. So I just want to go through it real quick. So during the strategy phase for the Mac Center, we asked a lot of why questions. You know, why are we doing this, and what are we trying to accomplish? We talked a lot about users, their needs, and about the Mac Center as the client and their goals. And I presented in the end this big strategy document that outlined our findings. You know, what are the primary concerns to the Mac Center with this new website? What are the primary concerns to the user that come to the site? Who are the users in the first place? So we figured out certain user groups and their needs. So the art and architecture connoisseur that comes to the site is very different from the tourist who just landed, you know, from Austria, and has one day at the Schindler House. By the way, if you haven't been there, it's an amazing piece of architecture designed in the early 20s by Rudolf Schindler, who was an Austrian emigre to California, and the Mac Center operates from that house in West Hollywood. And then the second phase is the scope phase, where the findings from the strategy phase are made concrete, and the goals are answered with specific content and features. So we now know who our users are and what our goals are, so what are the features of the content that needs to be included on the site, and that culminates in an outline of everything that will be on the new site. By the way, I often ruminate about this. So there are books being written about website user experience design that talk about this precise subject, and I'm not aware of a book being written about how you design a book as formalized. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe someone can suggest something, but that strikes me as funny, and maybe inherently the web is I don't know if it's maybe a more complex medium because it has these interactive components. I'm not sure why. But this process is kind of a nice starting point. When I get a new website, I'm kind of looking at my 5 S's and I'm like, okay, got to do the strategy now. Let's have a meeting. The third phase is the structure phase, where all the pages of the new site are put into you create hierarchy and design a sitemap where all the pages are in relationship to one another. How do the pieces fit together? And you show relationships and interconnections and, as I said, hierarchy. And then the skeleton phase is looking at individual pages and outlining rough blueprints of every page. These are called wireframes. And they're supposed to look kind of not handsome and a bit immature. It's helpful actually to look at this and know this is not going to be the final site. No, it's not going to be Comic Sans and a bunch of boxes with X's in them. So the client is reassured that there will be something pretty in the end. But it allows us to just talk about structure, just talk about content on each individual page. So we know on the home page there's going to be 3 upcoming events on the top in 3 columns, and then some kind of image, and then some introduction, and then 3 columns with the main features that the Mac Center offers its visitors. And we did a lot of these. This is the visit page, talking about location and hours. This is the past programming page, and all the different ways that the past programming, the past events can be filtered by category, by name, and by people that were involved in there. And I mean a lot of these. It just goes on and on and on. Every important page was marked up or imagined in this way. And it also provides a nice crutch for the client when it comes time to write the contents. But then, finally it's time to design the final site, and then it's time to think about typefaces and colors and patterns and the visual identity and photography and so on. And this was an early incarnation of this site that they were pretty excited about. I was too, but as we picked it up, there was a lull of half a year between this version, and at a later meeting, Kimberly said, well, I'm not sure if it's quite right yet. It feels a bit too Germanic, it's this kind of early 30s, heavy rules, and the typefaces look kind of like Berlin in the 30s. And that was conscious on my part, but we kind of felt like it needs to be a little less old, a little less stuffy, and more vibrant and contemporary and more confined. And one of the things that I've learned in my own work is that oftentimes when a client voices concerns and you feel like, you can't be serious, it's like you want to redesign the way I thought this was done. Oftentimes the end result is for the better. It takes a bit of getting over the initial huffing and puffing, and then things usually get better. So this is the final site that we just launched, and it is it is more contemporary and less and cleaner and less fussy, but it's still a bit quirky if you look at the typography closely. And I enjoy those black bars that separate those three images on the bottom. They're also reminiscent of the Schindler House itself. It has these concrete little slits that you can look through, as it was designed by Rudolf Schindler. If you look at the comparison of the wireframes and the final site, you do see quite obvious relationships. There's a lot of stuff that translated. Some things that was changed, but this big image that we imagined on the top, was combined with the dates, the upcoming events. And the reason there's only one on the right and not three is that there's only one upcoming event right now. And here, the visit page, there's an obvious relationship. And obviously nowadays, our big deal is that the site works well on mobile devices, not just on a desktop. And not just any mobile device. It's the inclination is often there to say, let's make this work on the iPhone, the iPad, and the iMac, and then call it a day. And really, the digital landscape out there looks more like this. So this is an image from Brad Frost that does amazing writing about responsive design on his blog. So we designed a site that is screen size agnostic, and it looks good in any environment, and at least that is our goal. And so as the screen gets smaller, the site kind of organically breathes in and breathes out, so to say. So things just get a little bit smaller at a certain point and compress a little bit more. And at certain points, if the window gets any smaller, the navigation will run out of room. So the navigation just collapses into this little menu icon that you can tap or click on to trigger the menu. And as you go even further, the 3 columns go down to just 1 column until you end up at something that will work really well on a really small device like a mobile phone. Not sure if it's going to work on a mobile watch browser. Probably not. So that might be next. I think I don't know how I'm at time, but I think I'm going to wrap it up. You can go look at the site and play around with it.